My name is Yoselin Benitez-Alfonso, and I am an associate professor at the University of Leeds in plant science. And yeah, my main area of teaching and research is intercellular communication. So, how plants know the responses that have to do in the shoot to control what is happening in the root and vice versa. So, how these two parts of the plant communicate and talk to each other to respond to the environment and also to make developmental decisions like growing or responding to a pathogen. Yeah, so I mean, if we can control communication, the main applications will be that you could make plants that actually respond differently to environmental cues. But we are very long way from actually doing that. So my research questions are actually mainly focused on the fundamentals that modulate the transport between plant cells, specifically through channels or pores that are in cell walls. The curious thing about my research is that I have managed to actually do some applications, industrial application with it. Because by understanding how these channels or these pores that control communication are regulated, I understand also how cell wall composition in plants are regulated. So part of my research, or a branch of my research, concerned developing biomaterials by mixing the knowledge that I have from plant cell walls and the cell wall materials or the cell wall components that you can extract from crop waste or from brewer's grain, and then taking those materials to mimic just biomaterials that we use usually in modern life, like paper, but also hydrogels for drug delivery. So all this kind of range of biomaterials that we're trying to make more sustainable, renewable, and environmentally friendly. So I am originally from a small island that is not UK, it's Cuba. So my family is all mainly dedicated to clinical research. So I probably kind of got that drive for doing research from perhaps seeing my father studying during the night and surgeries and stuff. And I was driven by the research more than plants specifically. But when I went to the university after that, where I did a career in chemistry, so I didn't do a major in plant science, I did my major in chemistry, I discovered how amazing the chemicals that the plant use to communicate between cells regulate all their responses. So how everything is controlled by the transport of chemical signals and the response to these signals, determined by the genes and the proteins that are synthesized in a cell. So serendipitously, there was a good group in plant science in the university that I was studying, and they were looking for a PhD student. So I started asking this question on biochemistry in this group. And once you are inside of plant sciences, for me, you never leave, just because plants are just fascinating and there is so much to learn from them. So I started looking at biochemistry, and from there I started to look at molecular biology and looking at gene expression and how the biochemistry controls gene expression. Then from there I was a little bit more intrigued, and then I went to, but I cannot control this gene expression in crops, so I need a model plant. So I went to another lab to study Arabidopsis, which is the major weed that we use as a model plant. And then there I had the tools to actually modify this gene expression and tune it and modify these chemicals to actually start to understand how they integrate to make specific responses to environment or the developmental cues. And so from there, I just then ask a little bit more and say, okay, how this all thing integrates into actually make a whole plant. So I went to developmental biology. And from there, I started to think, but there is a lot of physics and interactions that not only happens through the genes, it also happens through forces. So I went a little bit more and then went to the material science. So it has been a career that, for me, it has been question driven. And this question driven need to actually answer fundamental questions, it has brought me through different levels of research and applications of this research. The most rewarding part of my job is that day in which you actually discover something unusual. So if you are a scientist, you know that there are, most of the days, every day almost, is full of disappointing news about research. So there is, most of the experiments don't work the first time. So you have to wake up the next day and say, I'm going to repeat this again and again and again. But the pleasure or the excitement when you see this thing that you have been trying for sometimes years make it work, when that actually happen and you see, or for me, when you find the answer to that question, it's just, compensates for everything else. So for me, that's the most rewarding thing. So I am egoistically looking for answers. So I am just a researcher, I guess. That's the definition of a researcher more than anything else. The other part of my work that I actually really appreciate is to have students, or the part of education, and this also make up for all the times in which the experiment don't work, or the answer is not there, or the answer is not the one that you were actually trying to find, so it was completely the opposite. So they're also seeing through education the change in expression, or the change in attitude and views from this, from young generations, when you're actually explaining a basic concept and try to transmit your knowledge, is also priceless, and it's also compensate. For me, education and research needs to go hand by hand to actually complement my life and make it, feel like I am happy.